Good morning. This is the Innovation Conversation. How you doing, Tom?
Doing great, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Doing
All
terrific.
right.
So, we were going to talk today because to bounce off a little bit of the conversation I had last week with Barry Clogan, talking about retail media, in part because there were three conferences recently that took place almost simultaneously on the subject, one of which you went to.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about um, about what the people were talking about at those conferences. What was your sense of that of the segment at this point?
Well, one thing, even before the specific content in the conference that I went to, it just struck me that literally, like almost concurrently, like definitely within a week, there were three conferences that if you're a retail media professional, you would have gone to.
Right.
The Path to Purchase Institute, which has been around a long time. There was a Cornell retail media event that was done in New York City. And then there was a Brand Innovators Evolution of Commerce Summit, which really highlighted retail media and how retail media and commerce are becoming more integrated.
And
In
that's the
fact,
one and that's the one you
that's
went.
the one I went to. I went to the Brand Innovators event. Um, and so it just occurred to me in seeing the three conferences together, um, that like, well, first of all, I was thinking like, well, when do these people work? Because they're always at conferences. Not really.
Well,
Um,
but my answer to that, not that you asked me the question, but my answer to that is, their work is selling.
it is, and that's
That's
why
what,
you're there.
that's why they're there. They're selling.
Yeah, no, 100%. Totally get it. And this is a new space that lots of folks are grappling with. And
Right.
so it is you want to be in these venues where you can have conversations about, how we're going to do this, right? What we're doing, how we're doing it, how the space is evolving, the capabilities that we're bringing to bear, the measurement, the efficacy of different things, right? The creativeness you can get around it. Like that's all. It is important to have those conversations. It just struck me that really we have three of them at the same time. And then, of course, you go to even most of the conferences that are on the regular circuit, the regular kind of retail circuit, and then the regular advertising circuit, and how big retail media is in those. So, not shocking when you have, this much media moving from traditional mass media, has to go somewhere. And this is a place that makes sense for at least some level of it to go. So totally get it. Makes sense. We should be talking about that. It is the next wave in advertising. It is something that's important to retailers and advertisers. So clearly is an area we should be focused on. I will say that the Brand Innovator Summit that I was at, um, it was really something. I mean, I made a list here on my screen of the heads of retail media that were at this conference. All had at least one session on stage, if not multiple sessions on stage. Plus, of course, all the networking and whatnot. Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, Target, Amazon, Best Buy, Albertsons, Kroger, Ulta, CVS, Instacart, Dollar General. That's the retailer side. Uh, Nestle, Mondelez, Kellanova, Keurig Dr. Pepper, Danone. That's the traditional big brand side. There was tons of medium and small brands there as well. And then I'd call it the others. United Airlines, Chase,
Hmm.
right? So it was a who's who, and then a lot of the agencies were there, and the tech companies, the measurement providers, like there were a lot of those folks that were there as well. But I would say you did hear um, a lot of the same things over and over again. Not in a bad way necessarily, but it's the things that they're all wrestling with. What is the right inventory to make available? What are the right types of impressions? The right capabilities, around the purchase funnel, the customer's path to purchase. Um,
But let me ask
uh,
you, let me ask
yeah,
so let me ask you the question this way. So you have all the retailers there, okay, from Walmart right down the list. By the way, I don't think you said Amazon in that group.
I did.
You was Amazon? Okay.
Yes.
So Walmart's there, and all those other retailers, and they are creating retail media networks that they're looking to monetize by selling advertising space to the brands that were there. The brands are not there they're not creating their own retail media networks.
No, I mean, I didn't hear that, at least not, not commonly or predominantly, but, for the brands, it's really important. Like, where am I going to be? It's my spend. Where am I going to, where and how am I connecting with customers? What's the relevance of that message? What's the resonance of that message? How does it convert?
Right.
That's really key.
Was the conversation though, because this is, I mean, listen, this is the conversation they're all going to have. It's got to be about ROI, right? The retailers have got to be looking at the audience and say, hey, listen, if you advertise on our retail media network, and if there's 20 retailers there, they're fighting for the same dollars, right? As they take dollars away from traditional media. I mean, what was the number that I talked to Barry about was the fact that this year retail media, in terms of advertising spend, is going to outstrip traditional broadcast media. Although part of the reason is because broadcast media is declining, not because, right? So the retailers are making the argument, this is why you should advertise with us.
For sure.
Are the suppliers up there saying, hey, listen, we want to advertise with you, but you're going to have to make the ROI case to us?
100%. I mean,
that's the core of their message.
It is the core of their message. And it is the core of retailers speak a lot about the quality of their audience, right? Their ability to target, their ability to provide attribution.
Right.
So that is a key, very key message coming from the retailers, right? We have, it's really key, and brands are absolutely asking them for that and seeking, where they can go and find the best results. I get it, totally get it. Absolutely believe that this is a space that's going to continue to grow. I do wonder, though, the customer centrist in me. Is that a word? I made it up.
It works.
The customer centrist in me does worry that we're going to bury customers with this. There are lots of customer impression points through the customer purchase cycle, right? There are lots of them. But are there enough of them with the amount of media that's moving into this space? Are there enough of them to satiate the advertisers, right? To provide the retailers the right ROI that they need, and to also maintain a valuable customer experience, or the appropriate customer experience? Because the last thing this industry, frankly, can afford to do is alienate customers.
Yes, I would agree. That's been my argument about Amazon all along, is that I'm so inundated by ads that, I'm still using them, but I find them more annoying than they used to be. And the question is, will there be a point at which their usefulness, it just won't be, when I measure in terms of my experience, I'm going to say, I'm just not going on them anymore.
So you could argue, totally get it, by the way. And we've had that conversation as well about how it's eroding the experience. Little context, Amazon is plus or minus 70% of the market today, right? Amazon
so 70%. So if they said there was like $176 billion in advertising spend on retail media networks in 2025, Amazon's 70% of that?
No, I say no. Again, I'm going based on kind of trailing 2024-ish numbers, where Amazon was relative to what's considered retail media. Amazon does a bunch of other advertising.
Right.
I don't know, maybe some of that's being counted in there, but I've seen numbers where retail media is somewhere around 80 billion, and Amazon's retail media part of their advertising is somewhere around 50 billion. Right. Of just the retail media piece. But you could argue that more of Amazon's advertising is effectively retail media, and it's a bigger number. But I think most most advertisers would scale up and down with that. But where I was going with that is Amazon is still commanding that much. And while we're annoyed by it, we're still shopping. It hasn't seemingly measurably impacted Amazon's business,
Right.
right? I mean, 1 in 3 units sold on Amazon is a consumable
Right.
item, and there's plenty of commerce still happening. Um, the second position is Walmart,
Hmm.
right? Somewhere, but Amazon is somewhere between 3 and 4x the size of Walmart right now in
Hmm.
retail media. And you're already starting to hear
Right.
manufacturers pushing back on Walmart. Now, I've had many manufacturer
Pushing back
conversations.
on Walmart to say we're not
We're
getting
not,
the
we
ROI.
need to see more ROI here. And it's early. So the manufacturers are generally relenting and continuing to spend and increasing their spend, but they're going to continue, and Walmart's share is undeniable.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to play ball with them,
Right.
or at least be willing to kind of, test and learn for a longer period of time than you might with others. But, but clearly, and it's absolutely happening that brands are saying, we need to see return on these dollars. And so then when you start stepping down, size wise beneath Walmart, and you get into the larger grocers, the larger mass retailers, the other mass retailers, the different formats. They're not there yet as far as the high level of scrutiny, but it's coming. And so, can they build the right capabilities to deliver the return? And I'm highly optimistic that there's a lot of good customer data out there and that the tools can enable you to create really contextual messages, to these customers. So there's a bunch of me that thinks you can actually maintain a pretty good customer experience, but that's just to some level. And I don't know if at some point the amount of dollars trying to get in the space overwhelms the amount of inventory that's available in the space and therefore overwhelms the customer.
And or so much inventory is made available that it overwhelms
It overwhelms the customer.
it
Absolutely.
becomes it's funny you mentioned that two companies, non-retailers that were at the conference, Chase and United
United.
Airlines. And if I'm signing on to my Chase account and they're using that as an listen, I accept that they're going to try and sell me a mortgage or a home equity loan or maybe a credit card. But if they're starting to use that access to me to sell other stuff, or on United Airlines, they've got those screen, that now every seat back has a screen. If they're and there's a lot of that salesy stuff going on already. I just think maybe they just don't care. I just think they're gonna the load bearing walls of this enterprise could collapse under the weight of everybody trying to monetize everything. Um, you know the the example I would always use is, you know, um, Major League Baseball games. Like if you're listening to on the radio, you're watching television, they have attempted to monetize every moment, right? Hey, it's the third pitch, and it's brought to you by Sal's Hot Dogs, and it's the fourth pitch, and that's brought to you by our local Chevy dealer, and then and the walk to the mound is everything is sponsored. And for me, I mean, I like listening. I love listening to baseball on the radio. It's the only sport you can really listen to on the radio, right? Because there's time and they can tell a story. And a great sportscaster, right? Great play-by-play guy, Vin Scully or Gary Cohen. They're telling a story, and to force them to interrupt it with the constant sales messages it ruins the experience a little bit. Now, if you love baseball, you get through it. But I don't know that any of those messages stick necessarily. They become an annoyance as opposed to anything that's going to convince me as a listener to get their product. Does that make sense?
Well,
And that's a kind of retail media.
yeah, I mean, it could definitely, it's because yeah, for sure. It's brands and it's retail and retail products that are being presented in a media environment.
Right.
So it definitely would be some flavor of that. I would argue that this has been going on for a long time.
Hmm.
I mean, you go back to the, 50s and 60s and there was ads everywhere in sports. Maybe not as much in line in the conversation, but I'm sure if you went back and like did a Google search on, you know, baseball radio advertising, in game. Yeah, I bet there's a whole bunch of stuff from.
Oh, well, what was the old thing in the old baseball stadium? I don't remember which one stadium it was, where if the guy hit a home run and hit the cow, you got a suit or something like that. I
Right,
mean, but the player would get the suit, not anybody else, because the
right,
players didn't make very much money then.
right.
Um, no,
I mean, I get it.
I
I
understand
get it.
that. It's like, I mean, soap operas, right? Back in the 50s, 40s,
Amen. I was going to go there next. You bet.
right? They were a kind of retail media in the sense that they were sponsored by
Palmolive.
Procter and Gamble, right?
Yes, yes. Well,
But it
yeah. There's another
but
one, but
it
yeah.
wasn't like um it wasn't like you know where I'm going with this. It wasn't like, the people were about to have an affair and the guy looked at the woman and said, "Wait a minute, we're going to consummate our affair on these sheets. They smell really good. What do you wash them in?" And she said, "Well, I use Downy or I use Tide or whatever it happened to be." Right? Because that would
And
be,
don't forget your condom by Church and Dwight.
it's like it's like there's a line, right? And
Yeah.
I just have this feeling. I mean, my sense is they're gonna the companies are going to trample it. Now, I mean, and in United Airlines with the seat backs that I was referring to, I mean, the first thing I do when I sit down on an airplane is I turn off that screen.
Oh,
Look
grumpy
for the
old
button,
guy.
I turn it off because
You're just a
I
you're
have
just a grumpy old guy.
I am a grumpy old guy, and I'm probably not totally. And but I get that, and I get that, and I also get that I'm not the center of their target. I totally understand that, but I do think that is a metaphor for what more, or a leading indicator of what more people might do if they're
Yeah.
overwhelmed by advertising. And I think that's
So
the thing that retail
they
media
need
need
to be aware of.
to think about.
Absolutely. Well, I would also say, when you're talking earlier, you talked about the third pitch being sponsored by so and so. Um, I would say that those ad dollars will dry up if the advertisers are not seeing value in that,
Right.
right? So, I mean, ultimately, this is a market that will solve itself. You just want to, I think, I do. I mean, I genuinely believe that the market forces from advertisers and the conveyors of those ads, that are basically, they're the agent, between that ultimately that will, in time will solve itself.
Right.
Um, but I think retailers and brands need to be keenly aware as we're getting there to not to minimize the collateral damage. I think you have to be willing to take some risks and maybe have a little bit of collateral damage. Like I think that's where Amazon's living now,
Right.
right? They're potentially causing some damage, but they're willing to kind of keep tweaking it because of how critical it is to them. And ultimately, they'll continue to get dollars to the extent that that the brands are seeing value. Although even Amazon is having issues with you hear brands questioning the value of Amazon advertising in a lot of cases. Now, Amazon advertising is still the creme de la creme, and they do deliver a pretty darn strong ROI. But I think the whole system is just at we just got to be really careful that the system doesn't bury the customer
And
and
also,
doesn't
and I
break
think
it.
Barry and I talked about this last week, which was, you know, I think food retailers especially would be well advised to make sure that the advertising they're getting is supportive of their broader value proposition
100%.
and brand equity, right? I mean, I think I talked to Barry about the when everybody used to come out with magazines, right? But the magazines were often largely irrelevant to the core mission of selling more and better food.
Yeah.
And so it just seems to me that that's one thing at least they could do is make sure the connections are
Yeah.
more supportive of the broader mission,
Yes.
and as opposed to just being a way of creating ancillary dollars. On
Totally.
the
I mean,
other hand, not to go down a road that I God knows I've spent a lot of time on lately. They're all looking for ancillary dollars because, I mean, at this point, I mean, think about it. Walmart is looking to generate more revenue. Well, one of the reasons Walmart wants to generate more revenue here is it might allow them to keep prices down
100%.
that are going to go up because of tariffs.
Yes.
And so, I mean, so I recognize that there are a lot of other things at play here. I mean,
100%.
most of it's about profit, but some of it is about being able to compensate for some of the market challenges that they're dealing with that are not self-inflicted.
Oh, 100%. And then some that are even semi self-inflicted, like the transition to more e-commerce and omnichannel,
Right.
right? Every dollar that moves away from every sales dollar that moves away from the core supply chain and the core customer buying a product off the shelf and going through the front end, right? Every dollar that moves away from that is a lot more expensive to sell and serve. And so these retailers, because they're the touch point generally with the customer, and they're the ones that we all impress upon them. You got to be omni-channel. You got to, or whatever better word for that, but you got to be able to meet the customer where they are and serve them where they are and how they want to be served and all that. Absolutely true. But right now, the retailer is bearing almost all of that cost. So it is fair that they turn to the brand and say, "Got to help me out here."
Right.
And right now, retail media is one of the ways that they can go to a brand and say, "But there's a way I'll give you some value for it," right? Not just hat in hand. So I get it, and it absolutely is necessary, and the cost structures ultimately need to be rebalanced. And creating these capabilities that touch customers, if you can do them right, and create better customer experiences that are on theme for you as a retailer, that are on brand for the product, and that actually connect customers with products that are going to solve their needs, like there's real potential here, but there's also potential to mess it up.
Yeah. As always. And it's when they mess it up that gives me something to write about
There you go.
and gives us something to talk about. Hey, listen, as always, thank you so much. I will see you soon down the road.
We'll be here.
Take it easy.
Thanks, everyone.